Let's go ahead and get started. It is 3:00 p.m. and those that we have a quorum, but I will ask that our clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Present.
Councilmember Hussein.
Here.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Here.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Here.
Councilmember Betts.
Here.
Councilmember Garza.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson. 7 present.
7 members present, a quorum, and I'll keep an eye out for Councilmember Jackson and let you know if he arrives. Just a reminder, folks, if you could continue to use the raise hand function so I can call on you. We don't have a lot of members of the non-council or city staff on the call, but we still do have a public comment opportunity. Those wishing to make public comment may do so using the raise hand feature. That is a *9 on your telephone, Alt-Y on your Windows machine, Option-Y on your Mac, and if you're using a Android or iOS device, click on participants, and then there's a raise hand function. I will give you 7 seconds until we close public comment. Exactly, my age. It's not really, Carol, I'm 35.
I was wondering if something was out. Yeah.
Usually Carol's one to call me on my BS here, so I'll just do it for her. And we are closing in, and that's the close of public comment. So next item is we're going to continue discussion on fiscal year 21 budget. I know Jake and Shelby are here, so I'll ask you all to turn on your cameras and mics. We will continue that discussion. I know some questions were sent out ahead of time. If you'd like to start that, how I envision this going is I think you've adequately presented the details of your amended budget, or at least the overview that was given Monday night, and council had some questions still. So let's answer those questions that were first presented in writing over email, and then we will open it back up to the council to ask questions. One thing I would ask that we might be able to go over today that we forgot to go over Monday, or at least it ran out of time on, was the HRCS awards, the Human Relations and Community Service allocation. If you don't have that handy, I have it on my computer and can share it myself, but would like to go over that before Monday as well. And then we also have Ms. Kaler on the phone, who is the treasurer and can continue to the discussion on the revenue estimates. But first, let's finish with those questions that I know were sent out. So Jake and Shelby, the floor is yours.
Excellent. To begin, we received a number of questions immediately after the meeting that we'll address. I provided you some written responses, but just covering it. The first question was more of a comment category, but noticing that the unemployment rate was only 4.3% in March because the estimates are made in the second week, which doesn't include the entire shutdown. We agree with that. As far as confidence in our estimates for a 20% loss in revenue, we've taken a look at the past nearly 20 years of changes in our income tax. You can see that in any given year that we've not seen a decrease greater than 8% to date, but this current event is very clearly unprecedented and nothing that we've experienced before. The closest analog that I would say we have is the 2008, 2009, which hit in 2009, 2010, in which we saw a combined 14% decrease in our income tax estimates. And we are taking into consideration additional factors, the economy, the current conditions, the sectors themselves, which are being shut down, which Treasurer Keeler can go into more details regarding. Skipping over to the second question, asking which executive order we're assuming will be finished by June 1st, what level the phase in. Treasurer Keeler provided a very detailed response. We're working under the conditions of the most recent executive order. We do not know when the stay-at-home order will end. It could always be pushed back, and therefore all of these information that we provided is subject to change. We've provided you with our assumptions, but we are providing our best estimate based off of the information we've presented, how we've presented it. Going into the details of what makes Lansing different from other municipalities that are assuming a 30% revenue decline. The treasurer previously had this question proposed at the very end of the meeting, so we apologize that we didn't really have too much time to go into details. Not all other municipalities are projecting a 30% decline. The scenarios are based on characteristics that are unique to each taxing jurisdiction. An example would be Detroit City, which is a major hub of international and domestic travel and was hit harder by the coronavirus outbreak than we have historically been. There's also the specific mix of employers that are within our area as opposed to other communities across the state. Treasurer Keeler can go into more detail about that if you have any questions, but we have provided you with an estimate based on those factors and considerations. Looking into the final question, what does it look like if we do not hit that 20% target where we make it additional cuts? We're, to put it shortly, exploring all available options. One of the things that we will tell you to look out for is that we will continue to provide quarterly budget updates and vacancy reports as we continue into the upcoming fiscal year. And so these will all be opportunities at no less than a quarterly basis in which you can take a look at our budget, see our most recent projections about revenue, and provide any adjustments. We can provide you more information and adjusted expenditures based on those expectations, but we'll keep you informed and to the best of our ability throughout the whole process. And it's part of a cooperative endeavor through the next fiscal year. Yeah, I believe there's also a question as to the amount of the impact of other pool savings overall. Not having no pool security between July and August 2020 would be a $15,000 savings in addition to what we've provided. Are there any immediate questions based on those answers so far?
Any members have questions so far? Dodged a bullet there, Jake. Please continue.
Excellent. And so those conclude the questions that we submitted written answers for previously. Are there any additional questions that you'd like to bring up? You had a question on the HRCS allocation.
We'll come to that at the end. I think we're waiting for Director Coleman to come online as we didn't give her enough notice that we were going to do that. So we'll shift over to Councilmember Wood, who does have a question.
I have a series of questions. I understand that Ms. Keeler is on the line. If we could have her available, I would appreciate it.
Hello.
Hi. In looking at the income tax projected revenues data that you provided us, can you talk a little bit about, and let's use East Lansing as an example. We receive 0.5% from people that are living in East Lansing and working in Lansing. Do you have, first of all, a figure of what that is?
I do. That's really a good point. That was one of the factors we looked at. For instance, so for 2018, we'll use that because that's a full fiscal year or calendar year that we can assess the taxes.
Okay.
There were 3,237 returns. But of that 3,200, 3,157 are individuals. So in looking at the different formulas and factors, if we were to, for instance, I think part of what you're asking me is, so people that are East Lansing residents that worked in Lansing, that were called home to work from home,
Right.
they were able to, say they were out for 3 months, they are able to complete the exclusion schedule, excluding their wages from their W-2 that they earned while working from home. So if you look at that number of individuals, and if they all worked from home, that would roughly hit our budget for 3 months to the tune of $258,000. Now, we know that there are other non-residents, and I'm working to look in our system to get an exact number, but I understand what you're asking. That would definitely impact, but that was factored in. But that definitely is something that we should be looking at. You're right, for future as well.
Yeah, and I can interject here. You've previously, Treasurer Kaler, provided me with an estimate of the East Lansing impact for the current fiscal year, and estimated at about $635,000. So that's data that you've previously provided us. Answers to council question, I believe.
Is that for a full year, the 600, or is that for just the 3 months?
That was based on 2020.
Yeah, so what I'm talking about is what she was saying, people that, this is something different, because if people are staying in East Lansing for the three, talking about the COVID-19 impact.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You had it covered then. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, no.
All right. And
Councilmember Wood, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you. Director Coleman is on the line, and I don't want to interrupt, but she has a call to deal with homeless at 3:30. So I want to make sure we can go over that HRCS stuff if we could, if that's all right with everybody. If not, we can keep going on this line, but we
no, I'd be glad to yield and listen to the director and then come back to my questions, please.
Very good. I will, I think this is her. I unmuted. Director Coleman, is the last 4 digits of your phone number, or last 3, 428?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're on, and I'm going to pull the document up on screen share so it's in front of us.
Okay.
All right, please go ahead.
All right. What you have before you is the HRCS recommended allocations for the agencies who applied for funds for the upcoming year. The process used for this allocation included a agencies meeting where they were given the necessary information and direction. At the same time, information was acquired about the needs within the community. Then there was a timeline by which they were to submit the application. And upon receipt of the applications, we then pulled in the HRCS Advisory Board, who first reviewed the applications, did extremely well with reviewing and screening, provided a scoring for us to take a look at. Then we came back, reviewed their recommendations, made some adjustments to them, and then submitted them to the mayor's office for another review and approval. But since that time, we have had to go back and take another look at them, making adjustments for the post-COVID. And so what you have before you would be the post-COVID recommendations.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, but I'm going to let members start first. I'm going to stop the share here. You all have this document, I believe, so I'm going to stop the share. Are there questions on this issue? Councilmember Wood, I saw your hand up, but I think that might have been residual from the last topic. Do you have a question? Yep. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Is the city attorney on the line?
Lisa Hagan is. The city attorney was having internet issues. I was warned by IT that City Hall was having IT problems.
All right. I do have some general questions about this budget, but I'm prefacing that with the fact that the nonprofit that I work for is listed in here as receiving funds. Is it appropriate for me to ask general questions, or would it be something that I should not engage in?
Ms. Hagan, are you there? There we are.
Yes, President Spatafor, thank you. Councilmember Wood, I believe that according to the conflict rules, you cannot participate in any decision. But as far as asking general questions about the HRC budget as a whole, I believe it would be acceptable as long as you're not unduly promoting your nonprofit.
Okay, I see the city attorney is on now, but based on that information, my general question would be in the 1.25 and looking at this list, I see that there are new allocations that are in here, and I see that you reduced the budget by 214,000. Can you explain to us why you approved the new ones, and of the 214,000 that was reduced, are those any that we had funded previously?
The agencies that were approved that were new were recommended by the advisory board. And with the new process, including them, we almost felt compelled to include their recommendations here. So they kind of drove the direction a great deal with this overall plan. I will also tell you that those that were eliminated were programs that were previously funded. They weren't, how can I put it? They were programs that were previously supported that probably will not have gone on this year anyway, but that we had set aside funds just in case there was an opportunity to offer those programs.
Thank you.
Did that help any?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there, Councilmember Hussein?
Yeah, so I guess I have a general question regarding, and Council, President Spatafor, I think you do too, but in terms of conflicts of interest, what was done differently this time around to vet applicants and ensure those didn't exist. But I guess something you said resulted in a second question. What did we do to ensure that the recommendations coming from the advisory board, making sure that there were no conflicts of interest as it pertains to the advisory board and any agencies that are slated for funding?
We use the same process for the advisory board that pretty much was used for us, except that we did not submit it to the city clerk's office. We had them go through and list those agencies that they had connections with, either serving on boards or otherwise, and then those individuals, they were not scoring. They were only being scored by those remaining. And then your second question, help me please.
Sorry, it was just a general question because we've obviously had issues, recent issues with conflicts of interest, and I just wanted to know if there was any kind of elevated approach this year to ensure that those didn't exist.
Yeah, we did make sure that they had the information available, the same information that we received, describing conflicts, letting them know the importance of, and asking them not to review nor score those that they had conflicts. So those advisory board members who did have conflicts, and we knew that they did, we made certain when reviewing their recommendations that we had scores for only those who were appropriate to score. But we didn't receive any that we even had to eliminate because they did not score those where they had conflicts.
Councilmember Hussein, I think you're all set. You're all set, thank you. He gave a thumbs up for those of you on the phone. Any other questions? I have a question related to adherence to city ordinances and policies. I see, and the mayor's got his hand up, so I think he knows where I'm going with this, but I see at least one organization on here that violates the human rights ordinance with their philosophy toward LGBTQ populations, and asked the question last year and they were removed from the list. And I'm asking now, to what extent do we hold the receivers of these grants to local ordinance, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, and we actually had a note prepared for this, which apparently didn't make the document. We checked with legal, and when you say the organization, one program in the organization does not comply, the program that they applied for does comply. The program that was applied for is a refugee program that does comply by serving the LGBT population. So we are putting language in the contract that those programs cannot intermingle. No staff can be working on both programs. The program that we provide the dollars for, and all staff that work on that program have to comply with all of our ordinances. And the question we posed to legal after last year was, does the organization 100% have to comply, or does the program that we're providing the dollars for have to comply? And the answer was the program has to comply. So the judgment was made that that this refugee program is a worthwhile program. Again, the judgment from the HRCS Advisory Board was that this refugee program is a worthwhile program. It complies. And when that came to me, I set the direction for HRCS staff that if this is the recommendation, we're going to have language in that contract that says that there will be no intermingling. I don't even want a staffer doing half-time on each project. I want our dollars going towards that program, which 100% complies with our ordinances, and we want nothing to do with anything that doesn't. So that language is going to be in the contract. Happy to provide that to you as the contract is provided and then signed. But I'm going to make sure that's in there as well, because I'm very familiar with and in agreement with your argument.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple more questions if folks don't have others. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So we have in front of us $1.5 million worth of allocations to very worthy causes in most cases, and if not all cases. The question I have for you is, we're adopting a budget that we're not sure is going to be as solid as we think it is on May 18th coming into June or July. Do we distribute the dollars 100% the minute they're appropriated, or do we hold them and distribute them out in chunks? So $1.5 million is a lot of money that if we end up, I think it's almost what we'll have in fund balance looking at the 21 budget in front of us. So if our general fund revenues reduce and the percentage of our budget that's dedicated to HRCS functions needs to go down formulaically, do we have an ability to recover those costs? Are we just, because the last thing I want to do is give everyone their money and then say, oh, by the way, we need it back, please. Right. I think, how is this distributed? Is there a way to hold back some of it so that we don't give money we don't have?
Was that was directed to me, or was it directed
well,
to
it's if you can answer, Dr. Coleman, that's great, but
Sure.
I think Jake unmuted himself as well, so he might be able
Okay.
to get the budget
All
side.
right.
And if you want to take a stab at it, please feel free.
I'll let Jake go ahead. And if he
Okay.
needs me, I'm happy to kick right in.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm sure we could restructure it however we want, but I believe in last year we had payments split in half. So there was or quarters where there would be an initial payment. And then after we've received reporting showing that they've done their work, we continue to pay them.
Excellent. Okay, so that's good to hear. I don't think we need to do it in week increments, but quarterly certainly satisfies the concern that I have on that.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to address that as well, or?
Yeah, the only thing I will add is for a few things. One, like Jake said, it's quarterly. Two, I believe some of it is reimbursement. But three, I am sensitive to the nonprofit argument that if we're promising them dollars and then we take it away later on, it's going to affect their operations. So I'm nervous even to say you're getting $20,000 and then 3/4 of the way into the year we say you're only getting $15,000 and now they are short $5,000. I don't want to see that either. But what we're going to do is tell them this is the amount in contracts. We're going to let folks know up front, this is your award allocation, but it is contingent upon our budget having the dollars. We want to be very specific with agencies to say, in the past, and when I first came in, I had agencies come to us and say, I was promised this money. They had award letters, but they didn't actually have contracts, and we honored the contracts. But again, we want to be very upfront with our agencies to say our budget is in flux, and if the budget goes down, that could impact the 1.25%. If the budget goes up, there could be more money because we're looking at 1.25%. But we're going to be very upfront with our agencies in the award letters that go out to say this is based on the allocation of the council passed budget. And we will continue to update you as you go, because I just don't want anyone to be underwater in 9 months.
No, I appreciate that argument. I think there's 4 of us on here who are nonprofit employees, but the same argument can be made for, I don't want to have to lay people off at the city because we've made obligations we can't hold anymore. So I appreciate the forethought on that and including that in the contracts. Thank you very much. Councilmember Spitzley, I saw your hand up, but you put it back down. Are you all set? You're good? Okay.
No,
And then-
I'm not all set.
Oh, you're not all set. Go ahead. Go ahead. I've got another question. Please feel free.
I'm doing this whole hand on hand thing and I'm learning. But I think I'm just kind of following up on what you said, President Spatafor, because I agree. Absent, things that are, grant dollars that are given to us that we have to allocate, I'm troubled that we would continue to operate the same when we're looking at such dire straits. And our nonprofits and the programs that we support do wonderful things for the city, and so I'm not by any means suggesting we cut them off, because they serve they serve a depressed and needy population. But as we are looking at this, I mean, I am concerned, and I will continue to be concerned that we have, if we're laying off people or we're reducing our rainy day fund or fund balance, do we need to also do that percentage-wise with some of the other programs that we administer? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Spitzley. My final question before we can move on and you can get to your 3:30 call as promised. During the discussion about changing the HRCS ordinance, we received a number of pleas and input from nonprofit leaders that these dollars were expected and part of their operations. To what extent do these dollars indicate programs and opportunities for residents of Lansing versus the operational bottom line of some of these nonprofits? I don't know if you can answer that question, or is there a way we can work in the future to ensure that these dollars are going toward, services for Lansing residents, not necessarily keeping the lights on for an organization that may serve outside of the while with a great mission, maybe serving outside of the city and outside of our residents.
I understand exactly. We have and do intend to include a statement with regard to where the funds should go in terms of serving Lansing residents, no doubt. That too will be included in our contract, but also in our orientations, in our agency meetings. We'll make sure that that's clear and that there'll be no misunderstandings. The difficulty with the other part of your question centers around whether or not it's being used for operations. Well, I'm sure that many of the agencies are going to be looking for the funds that they've requested to support projects, special projects, but hopefully they won't necessarily keep the lights on. I can't tell you specifically what percentage of the agencies on the list that will be the case for, but I will tell you that that's been certainly a focus of the contract managers, that the agencies do secure other funding and that they're not relying 100% on the funds coming from the city.
Right. I think we're just a pioneer in having this 1.25% dedicated to these services, but the reality is that as was very obvious in this budget cycle, our revenues ebb and flow, and I don't want folks to become too reliant on this as a guarantee rather as a supplemental. So
I agree.
Thank you very much.
And,
go ahead,
sorry.
Director. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, yes, that's something that we continue to push for. That was quite a bit of the conversation that we've had when we were reviewing the applications, encouraging the agencies in the past to make sure that they have other funding, because we could not guarantee 100% from one year to the next. So thank you for the reminder.
Yes, and thank you. And I don't see other hands, and we never had a chance to really formally welcome you to the city because I think we never really had a meeting where you presented. So welcome aboard, and please feel free to log off and jump onto your next call. We will continue with our budget discussions.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Councilmember Wood, we're back to you, I believe. You had a series of questions continuing on the budget.
Yes.
Or perhaps it was for Ms. Kaler, right?
Yes,
Treasurer Kaler.
it was. Thank you. Is Judy back on?
She's still here.
Okay, there she is. Thank you. My concern, and whether you're able to address this or not, continues to be, again, the projections of our revenues looking at how you made that determination. The other has to do with this, we're using the term new normal, that we're looking at, where we have more so office employees, because this isn't, if you're working at McDonald's or on the line of GM, you can't work from home. You know, you've got to be at a physical place. But many of them we're hearing are looking at doing businesses differently, including, you know, let's talk about the schools, where there's talk about them coming in and having virtual schools so many days of the week and then back to the classroom a couple of days. This, I believe, is going to affect the bottom line of the 0.5% that we're looking at, especially if you're working from home and you don't live in Lansing, since they have the ability to reduce that liability. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, how you came up with your figures, if those were considered as part of that, and what you see in the future? Because again, we can't turn the spigot on July 1st. It's not going to happen. We're going to have to gradually work into this.
I would agree with that. And I wish that I could give a more definitive answer, and I don't think any of us can, because we don't know exactly where things are going as far as who's opening up when and at what point in time. But I did, in preparing the projections, one thing that I did think about was, and I'm not going to mention who the employer is, but there's an employer that withholds for 5,467 employees, and of that base, 1,133 are Lansing residents. So that's the 1%, right? The other 4,334 are the 0.5% people. Now, this particular employer, I'm pretty sure that these individuals could not work from home, but as you indicated, there are some sectors, for instance, education. We wouldn't have salons, obviously, but there are a few others that we looked at to.
State of Michigan, Jackson National,
exactly.
Accident Fund.
Exactly. Actually, that's in my Sparrow. That's another one. You're right. McLaren. Let's see. I listed quite a few, didn't I? Because that was one of the things that I felt was important for us to talk about when looking at the projections, because, for instance, there's one of our sister cities, which is a lot smaller than we are. They are a tourism. That's their main industry, is tourism, right? Whereas with us, we have, like General Motors, I'm pretty sure those folks won't be able to work from home. Michigan State, as you indicated, education's looking at how to go more virtual and may continue and phase in over time with going back to regular, business as usual. The hospitals, of course, they probably can't have too many people. Jackson National Life, Peckham, LCC, auto owners. We have a lot of top employers that you're right. They may have the ability and may decide down the road to continue allowing some of their employees to work from home. So we did attempt kind of a phase in speculation, but again, we don't know until the dust settles. Another thing also that would allow us to have a better sense is after people file in July, then we'll have a much better database, a more reality-based database to look at, so that we can develop some other scenarios and also get a better understanding of how things truly have impacted. COVID-19 has truly impacted the city. I know that was a lot, but I really know how to account for that, since we don't know what is going to happen in the future, and if employers are definitely going to lean towards having more employees to work from home. Does that help any?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whether this is an answer that Jake or Shelby can give us, of bonding, and especially the Lansing Center and the stadium, is the full faith and credit of those bonds connected to the city of Lansing.
See,
There you are.
You got that?
Are you saying, yep, that the bond payments themselves are somehow tied to our debt service schedule? Is that what you're asking?
I know they're not now, but are we on the bonds, if they aren't able to make the payments, are we tied to those because it is based on the full faith and credit of the city?
Correct. Yeah. So we're
Okay.
on the hook. We're on the hook for those. And we do have our municipal advisor on the phone too, if you have more specifics. But yes, I mean, they've used essentially our credit to issue that debt. So we would be on the hook.
So do we know what the bond schedule is right now for debt service for those bonds? And when we're looking, which I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but when we're looking at reducing the subsidy that we're going to be paying to the Lansing Center, there's always the potential that that will have an effect on whether they're able to make their bond payments. So one, how much are those bond payments? And two, what discussion has been made based on their reserves to be able to make those bond payments?
So I'll answer that question in two ways. One, I can send you the debt schedule for all of our bond payments, including those ones, so that you can see the full picture of all of our debt. But beyond that, right now, when we give dollars to the Lansing Center or LEPA, there's a general fund portion, and then there's a capital improvements portion, and so they're separated out. So if we decreased one, that you'll see in our budget right now for general fund, that wouldn't impact the debt service payment. So I'll get that schedule around and share it with the whole council on all of our debt, including all the Lansing Center payments as well.
But you do not know right now how much the debt service payment is for those bonds that are out with them.
I want to say it's around 200,000, but I know that's not exact, so I'll have to go back. I don't know if Brian Leffler, if you're listening and or happen to know what that particular payment is off the top of your head, but if not, I can circulate the debt schedule.
No, this is Brian Leffler. I do know the answer to that. Under the convention facility bonds that were issued, most of those are under the Tax Increment Finance Authority, and so those are that debt service payments is being paid by captured taxes. And if you recall, council member, is that over the past few years, those bond issues have been restructured to eliminate the need to have any backstop of the city's general fund to pay for that debt service. So at this point, if there is a reduction in LEPFA's appropriation, it is not being used for debt service payments for that facility at this time, and nowhere in the future.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
We can also provide this detail in advance of future meetings. Feel free to provide such questions to us in the future, and we'll get that to you in advance of the meeting so you have a copy in front of you.
Okay, thank you. And in looking at the budget, was there any thought about taking a percentage from each department? I know we've done that in the past where we've taken 2, 3, 5, 10% from each departmental budget in order to reduce expenditures. Has there been any thought in doing that?
Yeah, I can, and feel free to jump in, Mayor, as well. When we originally, kind of saw the writing on the wall and the changes that need to be made, you're right. The easy thing to go through is say, all right, everyone takes 5% or 10%. We tried to compile a thoughtful list of reductions that we could essentially try to get at where could we save without impacting services or people. And that's where we started. And so you're right, there might come a point in time where we have to go back and say, okay, Department A, you have to, reduce your budget overall. But we tried to have a more, I don't want to say thoughtful approach, but we tried really hard to what could we identify that would kind of get us where we needed to be without having to just kind of go unilaterally without any sort of justification. So we tried that approach first. We may have to go back. You'll notice in the budget that Jake presented, out of all the reductions, there's about 4.7 million of one-time savings or money that we can't count again, on for next year. So there's going to have to be, future cuts, of course, in future years to make sure we're truing up our structural deficit. Because as you remember, coming into this year, we already had an imbalance of about $3 million. So heading into next year, having that additional 4.7 million tacked on, It just means we're kind of, we're pushing the work out for ourselves. It's great to get that savings now and make sure that we're able to have our ends meet for FY21, but certainly that will just create additional cuts. But at this point, we haven't just gone unilaterally. We tried to put a little more thought and effort into what are some of the things that we could get without impacting people and services.
President Spatafor, I see that there are a number of hands that have gone up. I'd be glad to relinquish some of my time now, but I do have additional questions that I'd like to get back to.
Very good. We'll go with Councilmember Spitzley.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. I thought I just closed the whole thing. I want to follow up on Councilmember Woods, one of her questions, and I only have one question. So Shelby, are there departments that have taken cuts? I know you said some stuff about strategic and you looked at different, so are there specific departments that are taking cuts and other departments, I'm hoping like public safety and other services that are not taking cuts? Are there specific departments?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, you'll see in the line item that Jake produced, we have some departments that were essentially easier to cut. So for example, I always pick on parks. But obviously they're not able to provide services right now, right? There's no before and after school, there's no community centers open. So that was kind of a natural cut. And you're right, we tried to save the last for our core service of public safety kind of at the bottom. So we did kind of prioritize those and give those, additional thought to make sure that, again, we weren't impacting services as much as possible and or people. And so that's kind of how the list was generated. But yeah, it wasn't definitely a unilateral, cut across the top or anything.
Following up from that, we have provided a list of potential savings that I threw up on the screen for the previous meeting that shows how these individual cuts impact particular departments. Another tool in our belt looking into the next fiscal year is the priority-based budgeting process, which we've initiated with departments and cataloging the programs that they provide. And one of the areas that we can go into is costing out those individual services and prioritizing them according to categories such as, are they mandated by state and federal law? Are they urgent? Do they provide a primary service of the city? And so that could provide us the opportunity to look at our budget in a much more informed way rather than just saying, we're going to cut 10% of your operational budget, figure it out. So we're going to do everything we can in our ability to take a more structured and meaningful approach to our budget rather than just cutting the bottom line. Hope that helps.
It's almost like Congresswoman Spitzley. Councilmember Spitzley, are you all set?
Oh, that's kind of a forward-thinking kind of thing. I like the way you're going, and yes, I am. Thank you.
Right.
I'm glad to hear that.
I think she meant the title change. Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. Based on the question about the across the board cuts, I just wanted to remind folks or mention to folks who were not here when we did this back in like 2010. When we did, there was like a request for 10% across the board or 20% across the board for reductions. And when you hold harmless certain departments, and I will always say police and fire and they make up 55% of the budget or so, if we end up in a situation where we're calling for across the board, then everybody else has to take double the hit to cover that. And so I don't want to see that happen again, because it really did at that time end up pitting, I'm not going to use the word essential, but public emergency services against other services. And I remember the term that we used at the time was sexy, like police and fire were the sexy, things to spend money on. And, the tax collection wasn't. But if you don't have tax collection funded and you don't have the Treasury and the assessor's office funded, then you aren't going to have the basics to do what you want with, the sexy stuff. So I'm throwing that out there as a thought. I really appreciate the fact that you guys are like sort of, digging down into the specifics of what is essential, what is federally required, and what have you. I would not want to go in the direction of across the board cuts again. So it's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunbar. Back to Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. I wanted to have some additional discussion on the health administrator cost savings that you have projected almost $2 million. Can you explain to us exactly what that is and how that looks and how you've established that we would be saving that amount? And if you could talk a little bit about the property and casualty as well, that's about 400,000. So if you could address those.
Absolutely. When I first started, we didn't have a ton of contracts that were active for a lot of our vendors or agents. So one of the things that we had, we actually had 3 healthcare agents when in the fall. We had one for an active population, one for a retired up to age 65 agent, and then we had a 3rd agent that represented the over 65. So we had 3 agents working for us for healthcare. There wasn't really a systematic approach to kind of how we administered our healthcare. It was kind of essentially a rollover system. We hadn't bid out our plans or our products for many years, or our agent in general, just to see what were our fees and could we negotiate there. So that was an RFP that I put out in the fall, and we had a new agent start January, Manquin Vance. So I think I've mentioned before. Sorry, I have a poodle joining me here. So what we ended up doing by switching agents and having one is we were able to consolidate and save money on fees, which was great. We also had them go through and really evaluate what we were offering. So for example, telemeds, that was a thing that popped up earlier this year. We were paying our current agent for coverage on that particular service that we already had provided for free through both of our providers. So we were paying double coverage. We also had some stop loss on some prescription coverage that was unnecessary. So we had some quick savings. They immediately identified about $300,000 worth of savings this year right out of the gate, which was exceptional. And then what we did is we bid out our actual healthcare plans and providers to see, was there something better? So, I was really curious for like a McLaren, they're new in town. What could they do? Is there something else? Maybe they're anxious to get to the city of Lansing. How could we, restructure what we have? The products that we had were, top of the line. So sorry. This is what you get when you work at home. So we ended up bidding those things out. We had 12 different respondents, which was awesome for us because obviously the more competition we have, the prices go down. So we were able to maintain our current providers with Physician Health Plan, PHP, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, but we essentially kind of beat them up on rate, negotiated the rate a little bit better for the administration side for us. And so by redistributing that, we're still keeping our same 80-20 formula. All of that stays the same, but we're simply offering kind of a different product. And what I mean by that is our last agent we had with 44 North, we were using, they had instituted what they called like an HRA wrap, which was, I don't want to bore everyone with the details, but essentially it was a way that we could administer healthcare for savings. But one thing that it didn't do was PHP had basically a fully insured model with it, which didn't save us any money. So a municipality our size shouldn't really be fully insured on much of anything. Given the size, we should be able to be self-insured on most things. And so we restructured our physician health plan, basically product with them to be a basically self-insured model. So by doing that and changing how we essentially administer the program to people, so people won't feel any different. So come July 1, we're working through open enrollment things now with our unions to make sure everyone's set to go. It's the same plan, same product, it's just at a cheaper rate. So how we do it's going to be different. So we're keeping it away from the employees. They won't feel the effects of this. It's straight on us to be able to achieve that savings.
Okay, thank you. I have some questions for the city attorney.
Did you want me to speak to the property and casualty policy? Okay.
Yes.
So that was something also, we had Willis Tower for our property and casualty policies. We were paying about $1 million or so a year for that just insurance policy for the city. It seemed a little bit high, just kind of at first blush when I came here, but they'd been along with the city for many years. And so with the help of Christopher Mumby, he also helped work on the RFP to kind of go out and see, is there a better way to offer this service, just like any other insurance provider? We were able to hook up with a pooled system called the MMRMA, which is the Michigan Municipal Risk Authority. It's basically a pooled way, again, for us to belong to an insurance system so that we could drive our costs down. So we share the benefits of other municipalities. For example, like the city of Grand Rapids, the board is completely appointed by municipal officials. So it's basically just like a set seg, I'm sure you've heard, or a Middle Cities. I'm sure Peter's heard of these particular systems. But what you do by driving in a pool is that, of course, if rates are at a certain level and people don't utilize or don't make a lot of claims, that money gets redistributed back to folks that belong in the pool. So there's a way for us not only to save money, but actually get some money back in future years. So making that change, having the same level of coverage, and in fact, some cases we increased our coverage, we were able to save about $400,000 a year.
What percentage are we still self-insured?
Well, we're switching to mostly everything self-insured. Like workers' comp, we're still self-insured. Now that our healthcare is changing over to being self-insured July 1, there aren't too many things left that we'll be fully insured on. So we're moving there as quickly as we can. But of course, it takes time to bid things out and do things right. But at this point, our big, large policies right now for most of our insurance products have been switched over to self-insured.
Okay. Thank you. Jake, a quick question before I go to the city attorney. You had mentioned the Hunter pool was a savings of $15,000, but I thought we had heard from the parks director that it was closer to the $20,000, plus there was some additional savings without having lifeguards in that. So it sounded like we were going to be saving more than the $15,000, or did I mishear you?
Yeah, so the 15,000 specifically is in pool security. There are some other operational savings, but I'm working through that with the Parks Department to come up with a clearer answer for you for that amount.
Can I add one piece of it?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, go for it.
Carol, the other issue that Brett gave you're 100% right. Brett gave a hard number, but that was for the entire summer. So June is not counted in next budget year. So we're in essence taking 2/3 of the total pool costs. It's for July, August, September, or July, August, and not June, because June is current year budget. So that's why it was reduced a bit.
All right, thank you. Mr. Smirka? Hello.
Hello.
I've got a couple questions for you. I know the charter requires us to pass a budget on the third week in May. Under the emergency that we're in, is there any scenario that would give us the ability to put that on hold because of the fact that we are in an emergency situation right now?
I am offhand, I am not aware of any. That's a pretty firm date, but I certainly will look at that to see if there is. I just looked at that this morning, and I did not for that question, but for the dates.
Okay.
So I will look at that. But can I go back to the insurance question also?
Yes.
We are for public liability. That's police officers, for directors and officers. That group of insurance, we are what is called the self-insured retention. The SIR is $1 million. So we are at $1 million that we have to pay first. Now, by going to MMRMA, Michigan Risk Management Authority, we still have the SIR, the self-insured, at $1 million, but now our coverage has gone up to about $7 million. Under the traditional policies that we had before, we had nothing close to that level. We had to buy an excess policy. So this switch not just saves money, but it also increases the level of insurance. I'm just passing that on also.
Okay, thank you. In looking at the budget, is there anything that would prohibit us from breaking the budget down and passing portions of the budget? Say, because we're so out there and don't understand where we are from one moment to the next. If we passed a 1/12 budget or a 2-month budget, is there anything that would that prohibits us from doing something like that?
Well, 2 points in response. Number one, what is really required is a balanced budget. period. That's got to
Correct.
be done. And if you get into these amendments and vetoes and all that, everything's got to be balanced.
Right.
If you adopt a portion of the budget, you're still going to have to continue through adoption of the pieces that you don't deal with, because there's got to be a budget for the year. Do you know where I'm driving at? Okay. You can't just say we're only going to adopt police and fire and nothing else without saying also, and everything else continues as it is. Something along those lines.
Okay.
We'd have to fashion that so that we don't violate the Uniform Budgeting Act and also our charter.
Okay.
Can I jump in just real quick? I would add, I mean, the level of anxiety I have around a budget, and I've been doing this a long time, is probably the highest it's ever been in my years of ever working with local governments or schools or anything, just given the level of uncertainty. So, you know, I'm with you on that. We know the revenue estimating conference is Friday. I mean, as every day we get new information, better information, you know, of how to kind of navigate this. One of the things that, you know, Jake and I have, we have in the works right now, of course, is our final amendment for this fiscal year 20. That's going to have to come in June. And obviously how we think we're going to end this fiscal year will directly impact how we start FY21. So I know we statutorily have to pass a budget by June 30th as state law goes, but certainly our charter I know is sooner. But I think right now, I mean, Jake and I are already gearing up to do an amendment, likely mid to late summer, just based on, you know, when folks are coming back, and Judy's able to put, you know, better projections on when, you know, governments basically come back to work. But so with that, I don't want to, you know, commit you guys to it, but we're certainly happy to do an amendment, you know, in a few months once we have more information. And, you know, essentially at this point, I know the mayor, we've had conversations too about trying to hold off on as much spending as we can until we truly know the impact. So although you might have to check a box and say we're passing a budget, just know that, you know, we're already planning on an amendment, not only for this final one in June, but then of course one coming up, you know, shortly after that.
Well, if I may, Councilmember Wood.
I appreciate that. My concern is I want to try to be as realistic with the residents as possible with a budget that we're putting out there and what they can expect. And so that's why I'm trying to drill down and get as much information as I can before supporting anything. So thank you.
So Shelby, Jake, Councilmember Wood, maybe the possibility, I know some school districts on the state are looking at a 1/12 or a 2/12 budget to sort of get the appropriation set for the first month or two of the budget process. So satisfying the state law and the city charter requirement, it would be balanced. And then to Councilmember Wood's concerns and to the mayor's, I think I heard you say not spending the money before we're sure we have it. That might be a route we could explore in the next 4 or 5 days. Obviously, absent any permission from the city attorney to kick the can down the road on the final decision. But I think that's what I heard as at least a possibility. Councilmember Shore, Mayor Shore, you wish.
So this, I'm not going to comment. I think it's a conversation we have to have. This is the first that I've heard of this idea, and what I thought I heard Jim say was that you have to continue funding things at the existing level except for what passes in a budget. Maybe I heard that wrong, but
I think what I heard from the city attorney was we can't pass a police budget and then say everything else is the same as it was. He you know, as long as the budget balanced with a reduction of 11/12 in every line item, it would be an appropriation for 1 month, or, you know, 10/12 would be 2 months.
Okay, I'd like to actually hear more about this, because in essence, that's what we're doing. We're passing a budget with an expected budget amendment within 2 or 3 months. I think passing a full budget at least gives people an idea of where we're at right now, and then coming back with very public amendments, which we have done and we will continue to do. I'd be curious to know how it works if you only pass a 2-month budget, and if that actually satisfies the Uniform Budgeting Act. For my days at the Municipal League, I'm not an attorney, so I'll defer to the attorneys. For my days at the Municipal League, I did not think that was allowed. I thought the Uniform Budgeting Act required a full budget, a full.
Well, it wouldn't be.
Fiscal year budget.
It would be a full fiscal year budget. We just funded at 1/12 of the value.
Yeah, one area that I would like to pop in and talk about, it would be if we are funding, doing a 1/12 budget, that has an impact on what we can do as far as issuing our operational contracts. So if we have only 100,000 out of say 400,000 that we expect to spend in the course of a fiscal year, I can't sign off on a contract that says we're going to ask for the service for you at this cost, because we simply cannot promise that we have that. We do not have that appropriation available, and therefore we cannot.
Jake, to that point, that's an excellent point. What do you do in the situation where the budget amendment comes back and says we don't have the revenues?
In that case, we just go back and we find adjustments where we can. And so
if you have an operational contract for 400,000 and the revenue's not there for it, we have to cut it from personnel?
From personnel, we can renegotiate the contract. We can talk about those operations, but I would grow a lot of gray hairs through the process if we had a fractional budget.
It's good for everyone to have gray hair.
I think to that point too, Jake, yeah, so right now, once we essentially sign a contract with a vendor, we issue essentially a purchase order, a PO, and we encumber those funds or we lock them down so that nobody else can spend those funds in that particular line. And so what Jake's saying is if we get a contract, like we do many contracts July 1st, until we had the full amount available to us, basically no contracts would be able to go out. And I also would caution too, when we put together a budget, it's not just the expense side, but it's the revenue side. And we don't always get the timing of the revenue for the months that we would be approving the budget don't always align. But it's not like we're going to receive a 1/12 of all of our revenue the first month, right? Some of it is sprinkled out for several months and some we don't receive until the first of the year. So just a word of caution, but certainly, I'll defer to the legal team here on what options we have, I guess, or what you guys want to do to that end.
I'm not saying that's the route we're going either. I'm just saying we're talking about, we know we're going to amend the budget in June, possibly, maybe August. This gives us the ability, at least what Councilmember was talking about, would give us the ability to force that decision on the council, when revenue numbers change versus going through the amendment process. I think it's 6 to 1/2 dozen or the other at some point or the other, but to the point of encumbering expenses on multiple hundreds of thousands of dollar contracts, that might be something we would caution against in a situation where this much revenue is in flux. I'll stop talking and flip it over to.
Another consideration.
I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstood here. You must have a balanced budget and you must have a full budget.
Right. Yep.
Testing is that the numbers don't change, something, it have to be looked at, but I'm not suggesting that you can do a 2-month budget. I'm okay. Just so
no, I understand it'd be a 12-month budget, but with a reduced appropriation and revenue.
Okay.
The expectation is how.
Another factor to consider is we're preparing to provide you with quarterly budget updates as part of, if we continue our policy from the previous fiscal year. And so any less than quarterly, we run the risk of pretty much an imminent shutdown if we do not pass a budget every period that you reduce our budget by.
I also would say, I think what Councilmember Wood was hinting at, and Carol, I'm sorry to put words in your mouth and your hands up so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but knowing that we'll have to do something again, probably before our fiscal year starts, what's on paper will probably change on May 20th, let alone. So if it is just a 1/12 appropriation, it satisfies the law, but also we're going to start budgeting again. Anyway, I'll move on to Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. My question was, if we did a 1/12, would that mean that to balance it, we would have to assume what revenue is coming in for that first month and only allocate funding that matches that amount, since you don't get the law of averages over the course of a year or even half a year? Would that balanced budget then be whatever the income is for, say, the month of July? And then that's all we have to operate on for the month of July. And I'll let whoever answer that.
Yeah, I mean,
Shelby wants to.
you certainly wouldn't be balanced, right? I mean, a balanced budget is money in and money out equals 0, right? Or you're not, basically increasing a deficit or overspending what you've been appropriated. So yeah, unless we had the money coming in to match the expenditure, we wouldn't be passing basically a balanced budget for that 12.
And do note that we have provided for $12.5 million in reductions already from our original estimate. Any adjustments that you see, we're not going to very likely see another 12 million. I understand we're operating on thin margins, but we'll be continuing to review our budget and provide you options and if we have a full budget, that gives us a breadth of the entire year to explore possibilities with you. So
It
I highly
appears the
recommend
mayor
against
fell
that.
into the Grand River over there. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, President Spatafor. You did articulate what I was trying to put out there, so I appreciate that. Jake, I just want to remind you that the fact you're giving us quarterly reports, you're required to give us quarterly reports. So it's not, yeah, so it's not just, you know, we're going to be giving you these, you have to give us those. So, you know, I just think this is an opportunity to have a discussion. And looking at this is a very unusual situation that we're in. My 20 years on council, you know, we have had to look at a variety of different ways to look at a budget. I know that the mayor, we had talked at the last committee of a whole meeting, had talked about the voluntary furlough. That is for up to July 31st. You know, it will depend on how many people take that. That will be part of last year's the current fiscal year that we're in. It doesn't have any projections on how it would affect the next year's fiscal year and whether we would have to extend that. So I just think there's a lot of unknowns out there that it is incumbent upon us to look at different ways of how we approach the budget this year.
Mr. Smirka has pulled out his charter and he's raising his hand. So let's.
I'm going to answer two questions with one read here. It's in the charter. Answers Councilmember Wood's question and also this last discussion. Not later than the third Monday in May of each year, the council shall adopt a budget for the ensuing fiscal year and make an appropriation of the money needed therefore. So it's basically mandatory in the charter, full budget year, third Monday in May. I know there's a practical way to handle that, but I'm just saying that answers that question about moving the dates, at least.
I think the date is pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've run out of hands here. Are there folks that have other questions for the Councilmember Betts? Is that your hand up?
Yes, it is. I'm trying to mull over the question that I want to ask. So the financial health team has suggested that we do multi-year budgeting. And now we're talking about doing single month budgeting. How does this, what do you think the financial health teams, this is a question for everyone, what do you think the financial health team would say about us doing a 1 month appropriation like this? Anybody have any perspectives on that?
I mean, at this point, I don't want to speak for what they would say, but it sounds like, if I heard Jim correctly, doing a 1/12 budget isn't an option for us now. Is that right, Jim?
No, he says we can't appropriate 1 month of financing, but we can appropriate whatever amount of money we think we might have. I mean, you can take us to court on it if we did 1/12 of the revenue and expenditures we were planning. But if we call that the annual budget, that's the annual budget.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that's where we're going. I'm just saying, as the appropriators of the funds, we can appropriate as much as we think we will or will not have. And we can say, spend it in 1 month or spend it in 12. It's up to you. But
Gotcha.
I'm not necessarily keen on the idea. I just think that the question of whether we can or can't do it is answered by saying we can do it. Should we is another question. And we have to do it by May 18th. That is clear. But as the looking at it, is if we think that there's only going to be $11.4 million of revenue and $11.4 million of expenditures, and we send you a budget, sounds like you got to lay off some folks for 11 months, but that's obviously the functional reality of a budget that's 1/12. But regardless, I wouldn't call it the June budget or the July budget. You'd call it the 21 budget with 1/12 of the dollars expected to be expended and brought in. And Jake is aging in front of me as I'm saying this, but I think that's where we are at this point. I'm like I said, I'm not even sure that I would support such a thing if it's going to cause a lot of problems, but it is something I think that we could do, just not necessarily should we do it. So I had Councilmember Dunbar, Spitzley, then Wood.
Okay, my question is not budget related. It was just if it was the end of the meeting. So if there's other budget related questions.
Yeah, we'll hold off. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I really appreciate the discussion we're having here with the budget. I think it shows that we're really trying to find a solution. And I appreciate President Spatta for saying that, you know, you're not even sure that you would support something like that, because it makes me nervous. So to talk about something like that, I agree with the mayor. Andy, you know, I just said I agree with you the one time. Uh-oh, the cat, he's been attacked by the cat. Are you okay?
On in the river, there's a cat.
Mayor's down, mayor's down.
Been training for this.
I guess. I say we've got to put together a budget and put together with the best information we have, you know, pressing, you know, our finance people as hard as we can and making some tough decisions, and then, you know, doing the amendments. I think that's easier to explain to our residents. This is the budget, you know, this is what we've done, you know, and they know we're going to come back with amendments. But I would be uncomfortable with a 1 month budget. That seems like we're not doing our obligation that we're required to do per the charter. We might be, but we're not. Thank you.
Excellent point, Councilmember. Thank you. Councilmember Wood, then Hussein, and then if there's no more budget questions, we will conclude with Councilmember Dunbar.
Again, you know, I think it's important that we throw ideas out there and get feedback from everyone as to how it looks, and versus not say anything. Second of all, to Councilmember Bett's question, you know, yes, the financial health team did recommend multi-year budgeting, which is something that we've not gotten as of yet. And looking at, again, through this prism and discussion, you know, it's an option. And right now, they're advisors. We're the ones making the decisions. And so we have to look at the information that's provided to us and come up with the best decision that we believe for the residents. I will add that, you know, through a variety of different things that the council's done since the COVID-19 pandemic has we've been involved with, and the meetings. I've heard numerous people get back with me about the difficulty of being able to participate and be part of and listen to and understand the Zoom and all the things that we're doing. And that's to no one's fault. We're trying to continue to conduct business the best way we can. But, you know, in order to hear some real feedback from people, I think we need to know that the situation that we're currently in makes it more difficult for people to weigh in. An example of that is just the noise waiver that we had on Monday night that we passed. During the council meeting, we received emails from people that had received the notice, that had some deep concerns about the situation. And we didn't get those until after the meeting. Some of them indicated after I sent emails back to them that they had tried to participate in the information the way it was given on the postcard and had problems. So I think, you know, anything that we can do to reach out to the public on this as we're going through this, you know, it's beneficial. I know many of the council members are doing that with their constituents. I know that they're putting up information about Zoom and all of those things, but if we're having trouble remembering how to put hands up and hands down, and for us, you know, just think of someone who isn't using this daily in their work. Number of us are using this mechanism because, you know, of our work challenges that we have, and so we've gotten very familiar with this. Somebody else that isn't, you know, they're frustrated and aren't able to participate the way they would want to. So that's my 2 cents. Well, it's actually 20 cents.
I was going to say we're up to about 43 cents with Councilmember Wood, but next is Mr. Hussein and Councilmember Hussein and Councilmember Betts.
Yeah, and Councilwoman Wood, I don't even know if I remember all of my questions, but no, I'm just kidding. I think the one thing I want to know, it sounds like, you know, we've heard from Andy, we've heard from, you know, Councilwoman Spitzley, as well as President Spatafor in terms of the angst generated when we talk about a July budget and calling it an annual budget. But the question from Councilman Betts, you know, was a question that centered on this idea of, you know, what would the financial help team, these guys on the side, what would they think of that? And we do have Brian Leffler in the room right now, and he was the chair of the financial help team for a considerable amount of time, and he is a municipal advisor. So I think it would be valuable to have him weigh in on the idea and the merits of the idea.
Mr. Leffler, are you prepared to tell us what the financial health team would think?
I can certainly tell you as the city's municipal advisor that I know this your city is no different than anything from primarily any government, the level of government in the state of Michigan trying to adopt a budget within the statutory requirement. But I would say though that by adopting the budget with certain information that you have right now, but essentially understanding that the communication would be that you're going to essentially have to be looking at this periodically, possibly more than you have in the past. You know, even to the state is even talking about doing another revenue estimating conference in August, which is normally it's just in May and June. As it relates to information and adopting a full budget, again, it's certainly communicated and it's going to be certainly understood by the bond rating agencies, other entities that would be doing business with the city, or even the residents, making sure that, you know, passing a budget that you know that there could be potential reductions going forward. I think that's no different than possibly even some of your own residents or businesses, is that they all passed budgets and they also thought they were planning on certain income and they all had to pivot knowing that things had changed. I think you're going to have, from the financial health team perspective, at least when I was on the chair, I mean, the biggest concern is that, you know, the losses and the reinvestment of the portfolios, which is going to cause even more pressure on your city's budget to meet what you're going to have to contribute on an annual rate of contribution. Even though there's what we call smoothing of those losses is going to be putting pressure on you anyways. So, and I agree with, as you're trying to move to a multi-year budgeting, that's a great model, but to do all that is really in a time like now as people are really trying to focus on what's going to happen next month, but their month thereafter. And that putting in models and certain things now to do that multi-year budgeting is going to be really helpful. Maybe not for today's session, but at least knowing that that's definitely a goal. And it's also going to be looked favorably on by the rating agencies, is that you are going to be using something more than that, just multi-year versus one-time budgeting, or even amendments to a one-year budget.
Thank you. Councilmember Hussein, are you all set? Okay, very good. Councilmember Betts.
I just have one piece of perspective to add. I don't know where I sit on this 1 month or the full year budgeting and stuff like that. I still got to think about it a little bit. But one benefit that I could see that I think that we should all talk about is the benefit of being able to engage the mayor and his staff in budgeting in the future, as opposed to being presented amendments that we aren't necessarily able to negotiate on. And that's something that I've been worried about since the beginning, only because of how this is structured. You know, the mayor comes back and says, well, we have $200,000 or $200,000 less than we expected. Here's the cuts that we're going to make. And that's what I saw in our last budget amendment that happened. we accepted it and that's where it was, and that's fine. Our body is supposed to do that, but I want to make sure that the community has input in this moving forward in what cuts we make. And I think that that should come from the legislative body, who is more connected to the constituency. And I think that we should be able to negotiate that whatever we decide. So Andy, I think that this is to you a little bit. You can respond or not, but I want to just make sure that this body has some say in what these cuts look like in the future, as opposed to just having something presented to us that we vote on unanimously and move on with. So I think that's my piece. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman, I agree with you 100%. We could have done nothing and said we have our original budget and it's up to council to find an answer. And the council president reached out and said, is that your expectation? And we said, we are happy to provide our recommendations. I welcome amendments next Monday, or, whatever your process is. I'd like to know about them, to have an idea. And that's what we've done in the past, is when amendments are, when people are considering amendments, they let me know. And if I disagree and you have 6 votes, it doesn't matter. But I welcome that. I welcome the ability to work with council. We thought we were helping you out by kind of going through and going with department directors and trying to identify, as we are the administrators, what our recommendations would be. But that's what these are. These are our recommendations. Anytime council wants to say, all right, give us the number and we'll come up with the cuts, I'm willing to work with you on that also. I don't think that's a problem. So I think that, the legislative body having the ability to offer and suggest to me amendments and things, we're always open to that. My challenge is right now, outside of what we've offered for the most part, it's personnel. And if somebody wants to offer an amendment to reinstate something that to not take one of my recommendations and instead, cut personnel somewhere, let me know. It's a challenge, and that was our I think Shelby said this, our goal was to not have to affect personnel immediately and cut what we can. It's not to say it's not going to happen in the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we are very open. I'm very open to recommendations, or you all have a legislative amendment process. I was the legislator in the State House of Representatives, and we went through the amendment process, and I even last year when an amendment came that removed something I wanted, I said, hey, this is the process, and I vetoed one of the 3 or 4 I vetoed, and it stood. So I'm always interested in the process and going through that and working with council and we agree sometimes, we disagree sometimes. I agree with some of you sometimes and not others, but I welcome that. So what you said is I agree with 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bueller? All right. We do have, as I said, Councilmember Dunbar, I will come back to you, don't worry. We have one more committee of the whole meeting on Monday, 5 o'clock, where we will continue this conversation. I have invited to City Council, the public health administrator, Linda Vale will be there at council to present on COVID-19. We should know a little bit more on revenues Friday after the State Revenue Estimating Conference. And as I mentioned, the budget priorities have been sent to you. If you wish to change them, please do so through the process there. And if you have amendments to the budget, we would appreciate them ahead of time, although it is your prerogative to do them on the floor Monday in committee of the whole and in the council. But we would, if you have a chance to give it to council members to take a look at, please do so. Moving on to Councilmember Dunbar.
There, I'm unmuted. This is a non-budget related question. It's a executive order related question. And I spoke with you, Mayor, yesterday, and I'm glad that Chief Green's on here. I have some concerns, particularly about the businesses as they're reopening and the mask policies. I personally don't want to shop at a place that doesn't require the masks. I know that businesses are technically by executive order supposed to, unless somebody has a legitimate medical reason, require masks in the place. I know that employers and staff are supposed to be wearing masks. But when we open up the city, when we start doing what we're doing, and businesses particularly, and city departments, what recourse do business owners and even city staff have if somebody comes into their location not wearing a mask? And what right do the business owners have to say, no, you can't shop here unless you're wearing a mask, or to make reasonable accommodation for those who can't, or say that they can't come in because they can't wear a mask? What recourse do those folks have?
Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. So, and I know we had a good conversation yesterday, and I'll let the chief jump in if I missed something. But in terms of businesses, a business is a private entity. So if a business owner says, you're not wearing a mask in my store, you're not allowed in, and someone says, I'm coming in anyway, that's a call to LPD, and it's a trespass. If someone said you are not welcome in here, then they can call LPD, and LPD can come and ask them to leave the premise, because it's now a trespass, and they can use obstruction and things. So that's the avenue and the tools that they have now. I mean, the governor's executive order says, it basically says, in any enclosed public space, people have to be wearing masks. But then, as I recall, and this may have changed, and I did not look it up, I apologize, I forgot. But the original mask language was that you have to wear a mask in an enclosed public space, but it was exempt from the penalty provision. So there was no penalty. It was just do it because you have to, but there's no penalty. So, if relying on the executive order, again, there could be obstruction issues, but a lot of that is trespass in a business, a private business where customers would go in. And again, many of those businesses are not allowed to have customers right now, but some are. So that's kind of the way they enforce. We are working on a reopening plan for the city of Lansing. I'm not anticipating reopening buildings for the public until I'm comfortable, until employees are comfortable. We have a stay home order, which basically says you can't leave your house except to do certain things. We know people now can get permits. We know that they can pay their taxes, and we've got structures set up so that someone can drop off a permit at code, and someone can pay their taxes online. And so we're still providing services. But when the day comes that we invite people back into our public buildings, things are going to change a little bit. We're working on a lot of processes, especially in City Hall. We're looking in City Hall at creating some kind of a concierge desk on the first floor where someone comes in, and where we have all those magazines and publications and things, actually having someone there where they can say, I want to talk to someone at HRCS. I want to talk to someone at Public Service, Council, in the mayor's office. And then a call goes up and someone can come down and assist that person, so we don't have people walking through the building. And there's a lot of nervousness. There's a lot of nervousness for employees to say, I don't want to come back if people are walking through the building. So we're going to navigate that. We're going to navigate that at Foster. Police and fire are navigating that right now at HQ and at the fire stations. So, and we're going to have proper policies for all of that to make sure that we are complying with the health department's order, to make sure we're complying with the governor's EO. But I think the question you were asking is what leverage do businesses have? And the answer is they can say, they can put up a sign, they can say, you are not allowed in my business if you are not wearing a mask. And if someone says, I don't care, then it's a call to LPD. They come in and they escort them out, or it's a trespass. Chief, did I miss anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think you hit all the points. I will definitely amplify signage. And obviously I'm not an attorney, but I think that's going to be the key that we look for regarding a trespass case, particularly for a business that wants to regulate people coming and going with mask on. Clear signage that says you must wear a mask before entry, something to that effect. That'll help us substantiate a trespassing case.
Okay, I'm going to follow up with that too, because one of the popular things I've seen floated as an excuse, and I know that there are legitimate, some people cannot wear a mask for an extended length of time. But for those who say that there's a medical condition that precludes them, does the business owner have the right to say, well, then I'm sorry, you can't shop in the store, or we can try to come up with a curbside deal for you? But does the business owner have the right, and maybe this is a question for Jim too, because I've heard it conflated with ADA, like there's a disability that prevents you from wearing the mask as opposed to a medical condition, and elevating it to the federal level. Like in those cases, what right does the business owner have?
You know, all those questions are really fact intensive, but if it's a private business, I almost, and there's an executive order and there's social distancing and COVID-19, the business owner would actually have the right to say, bring me, like when you're late to school, bring me your late slip, have the right to request some proof that you have this disability and are not covered by the EO. That's my initial thought on it. You think they're going to go that far? No, but.
So, and Councilwoman, in reading the order, I mean, it literally says any individual able to medically tolerate a face covering must wear a covering over his or her nose and mouth, such as a homemade mask, scarf, bandana, or handkerchief when in any enclosed public space. So that's the language. I mean, I am very hesitant to have our police officers act as health officials. So that's the language that they're given and the business owners will have as well. But again, if the business owner says, I don't want anybody in here unless they're wearing a mask, and they put that sign up, that's their leverage.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting the police should be doing this, but the private business owner would have the right to do something like that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've exhausted the questions for today. Appreciate you all making the time. I know it was short notice. Very busy schedules these days with vacations and trips to campgrounds and whatnot, but appreciate the time. We'll see you Monday at 5. Please, as I've mentioned in a few other places, amendments to the budget, if you have them, please make sure if you're able to get them out ahead of time so we can make sure there's a resolution or at least amendments written. And if you want to take a whack at the budget priorities, please let Sherry know, and that document will be presented to us at Committee of the Whole with those changes per usual. And without further ado, I'm going to call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole adjourned.